about this.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Anand Kumar for giving me such an opportunity here to speak before such an eminent audience. Today, I will be speaking on the emerging Indo US bilateral cooperation in the space sector. This is the format of the presentation. I will be basically going through the evolution of Indo US bilateral space cooperation, exploring the current status of the cooperation, then going through some of the projections for India's space program. What are the main targets? And based on that, what are the prospects for Indo-US bilateral space cooperation? The achievements of 2014, to be specific, things like the Mars orbiter mission success, the launch of our own of our JSLV with cryogenic engine, again the IRNSS, that is India's own regional satellite navigation system. Achievements such as these has catapulted India's space program into the world stage. And after 2014, I would say that India's space program is no longer the one which was before 2014. It is the perception of our space program has changed considerably, fundamentally. In this context, especially with the Indo-US strategic partnership now on an upswing, as we have seen, there is a need to utilize this to boost India's space program to the next level, as well as using that again to reinforce the Indo-US relationship. Basically, coming to the evolution of Indo-US bilateral space cooperation, our space cooperation started in the very beginning of India's space program in the 1960s. Our space program basically started with the launch of sounding rocket station at Tumba near Trivandrum, where the magnetic equator passes through. This was basically for collecting scientific information from the ionosphere, and the US contributed a lot to it, including training scientists, as well as the first sounding rocket, the Nike, an Apache, was also it was an American product. Then, as we progressed further, one very salient cooperation venture was the satellite instructional television experiment, which was held in the 1970s, wherein a direct TV reception sets were installed in around 2,400 villages across India, which was considered to be world's largest sociological experiments, and the US contribution to it is enormous. Again, the INSAT-1 series, which India launched in the 80s, was made in the US. India also contributed to certain projects of NASA by, like, for example, its Landsat, and as well as in sending some doing some experiments in the space lab, which was basically by the US. It's a US space station at that time. However, as we all know that India's the nuclear tests in 1974 and 1998 brought considerable strain to the relationship, and technological sanctions were laid on the country, as a result of which the cooperation in the science and technology sector, and especially the space sector, the cooperation went down. This was the story of the 20th century. Now we move on to the 21st century, where with the blossoming of strategic partnership between India and the US, especially after 2000, and the 2004 next steps in strategic partnership, where space was identified as one of the four major pillars, the cooperation has now increased. In 2010, while Obama visited India, he removed the ISRO facilities from the so-called entities list, wherein the licenses were waived. But this can be read to be a symbolic move, but again, it's very superficial, and I'll explain to you why it is later, if there is time. And finally, the major cooperative ventures between India and the US in space is based on the Indo US Civil Space Joint Working Group, which was in 2011, and the meetings which 4 meetings which happened later. Although the foundation for this was laid in 2008, and later it followed. Now, what is the current status of Indo-US partnership in space? As I told you, the working group, the various discussions, the various frameworks, the various agreements which have been signed during the past 6 to 7 years, this actually got translated into various projects. And I'm just enlisting some of them. For example, Chandrayaan-1 in 2008, the US provided 2 mineralogy sensors, whereby using one of them, which was used by Chandrayaan to discover water in the moon, which is a very groundbreaking achievement. Again, the cooperation between OceanSat-2 of India and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the US, as well as the Megatropics, it's a Indo-French collaboration satellite, and the GPM, the Global Precipitation Measurement, which you would have come across in the movie Swadesh. These 2 projects, these 2 collaborations have actually now being implemented, which basically looks into transfer and exchange of meteorological information between the satellites, the satellite programs of both these countries. Then the Mars Orbiter mission and the MAVEN partnership, which we have witnessed in the past 1 year, which has been again expanded through the Mars Joint Working Group, which was signed in 2014. Then the agreement on NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar or NISAR dual band satellite, using which the L band and S band 2 bands will be utilized, and both India will be contributing one and US will be contributing the other, and it will be a joint venture. It will look into various features like the topography, the green cover, the carbon emissions, and all those things, as well as very futuristic missions like earthquake predictions and other things. India has also started working on a program called as Global Positioning System Aided Geo-Augmented Navigation System, known as GAGAN, which basically utilizes the GPS data for Indian navigational purposes. India is also, as I told you before, the IRNSS, which is India's own indigenous satellite system, and the GPS of US, Global Positioning System of US. Both the countries are now working towards interoperability between the 2 systems, making these 2 systems more synchronized. So these are some of the ongoing joint projects which are actually translated from paper to reality. There are other areas of collaboration where not this great collaboration is happening, but some kind of collaboration is starting to take shape. For example, the space security dialogue in the event of all this space debris which has happened due to China's ASAT test, as well as collisions in space. Space science partnership. Then human space flight, an area of interest for both of them. Small satellites, which are now increasingly become more a trend in space. Exchange of satellite data and exchange of scientists. Diplomacy has been utilized for, as I told, for the advancement of both India's space program as well as India's foreign policy as well. Now, out of the 7 international agreements in 2014 which was signed by India, 4 of them has been with the US. This shows that the level of engagement we are now going into. And also, the Mars Orbiter mission's success was very well noted and was utilized by Narendra Modi as part of its diplomatic practice during his visit to the US. And this you can see how the Twitter response was for India's Mars Orbiter mission with respect to that of NASA. Both of them interacted through Twitter. Coming to the projections for India's space program. Now, what India is looking forward to for the next decade. 2015, India is looking towards the launch of reusable launch vehicle. This is very important because both for India as well as in the US, both countries are looking forward launching such kind of projects. The reusable launch vehicle is not like the ones which we have right now, which you it can be used again and again, and therefore the cost of missions will come down. And in the case of US, this is something which they are looking into, reduction of cost when the economy is not in a good shape, as well as for the US, for India. Then 2016, development flight of the GSLV Mark III, which will be able to send more than 4 tons to the geostationary Earth orbit, which is 36,000 kilometers altitude, for satellite, for communication satellites, as well as for human spaceflight. Then completion of the Indian navigational system. In 2017, the target is for the completion of Chandrayaan 2.
Solid 10 minutes, please conclude.
Okay. 2017 is for completion of Chandrayaan 2 project. There is an aim to increase the number of transponders in space to 400. 2018, there again, India is planning to return to Mars. 2019, the launch of the NISAR satellite, I already told you. 2020, Aditya Helios physics satellite for studying the solar radiations. And later on, manned spaceflight and privatization of space services. Now, coming to the prospects for bilateral space cooperation, this is my final slide. After the success of the Mars orbiter mission, Make in India, this is one of the major areas where the space collaboration is going to happen, because the FDI limit is now 74%, and commercial launches also, both the countries are having now convergences, and India and US both are looking towards to utilizing this area for the growth of India's the space programs of both these countries. Maritime domain awareness, using remote sensing data in the maritime domain so as to bolster the Indo-Pacific new relationship which is happening. Space situational awareness, collaboration in space debris mitigation efforts. Potential for budget deep space exploration, as we all know that India's Mars orbiter mission was very cheap, done through frugal innovation, and this is something which the US would like to take lessons from or also collaborate with India in. Human spaceflight convergences and the possibility of a new space station itself by the US replacing the current one, for which India might get a space in, might get a place in. And there is a limitless potential in one area, that is especially space science cooperation, as we can see in the launch of newer satellites which study various physical actors.
12 minutes already.
Yes.
I've given it 8 minutes.
Thank
12
you.
minutes already.
Okay, I'll just finish up. Now, the obstacles involved in it are export control issues, technology transfer issues, and space weaponization issues. I'm not explaining these things. This is related to the entity list and all those things. Maybe you can ask later about these things. So even though the cooperation is 50 years old, it's relatively nascent with compared to its potentials. And the geopolitical environment now is currently favoring this cooperation to go into greater heights. And the key deciding factor will be the pace of India's space program's growth. And the complementarity, I told you about the cost effectiveness, and America's technological innovation will be result in a win-win cooperation, and I think joint production and joint ventures will be the way to move ahead. I apologize for the overshooting the time, but thank you.